Hey everybody, hope you are doing well. My name is Erik Fredericks, and together with my co-author Byron Devries, we're excited to present to you our intended technique for applying genetic improvement to procedural story generation. Now, procedural story generation is something that I find fascinating. I really enjoy developing little side video game projects, and this is a way to bring genetic improvement to that domain. Now, the idea here is to take story narratives or little storylets, which are basically constructs that we can build out of grammars, apply genetic improvement to it, and come up with a new diverse set of stories for a player to experience that have never really been seen before. So if you're reading over the paper, you might notice that the visuals were kind of bland, kind of bare bones, very roguelike-ish, lots of ASCII art and emojis and that kind of thing. I've since updated it. I've been playing around with this past semester and having lots of fun with P5.js. And I've got a link to the project in its current state. It's not finished, but you're probably more interested in the genetic improvement aspect of it. Now, the idea here was to take a grammar-based system for generating story content, apply novelty search, which is an evolutionary computation-based technique for finding the most diverse yet still correct set of solutions, and apply that to our language. Now, the idea would be to basically have a novelty function, which is our fitness function in novelty search, try and find the most diverse set of generated stories using word2vec or some other NLP-based technique to kind of nicely fit into our fitness function here, and then generate a new diverse set of solutions. So that's the entire goal, and that's the purpose. We're not quite there yet with the GI aspect, but the playability is starting to get there. So I would like to thank Bill Langdon for allowing me to explore something interesting for this. I thought it was fun. I am out of time, so please feel free to hammer me with questions now. Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Cool.
So, hi everyone. This time we wait for like 20 seconds. I hope everyone can hear us now. So, maybe give us some signal in the chat so we can start. Can you hear us now?
Yeah. Wes asked about Dwarf Fortress, I see, so it already piques my interest.
Yeah, the question is probably during your talk. So,
Okay.
I guess we'll start. Okay, cool. All right. So everyone, we have Erik here, one of the authors for this paper. So now let's start with Q&A. We already have a question from our audience, West question. Do popular games like Dwarf Fortress use similar approaches? Qualitatively, what different source of stories would you be able to generate compared to standard procedural generation?
That is a good question. So Dwarf Fortress is, for those of you not aware, the monolith in the procedural generation area. Um, I'm I looked into theirs. I'm pretty sure it is a massive state machine with a lot of exploratory hooks, but um, for me, the possibilities would be limited based on an input grammar that I give the system and how I define the novelty metrics, basically. So the intended setup, which is not fully there yet, as you saw in the video, basically I would have, like if I'm generating a terrain, for instance, and I'm saying this is all grassland, and I'm giving every single tile a different story, a different description, I'd have a whole bunch of basics for what foliage is. And the intent would be then to kind of let novelty explore, or let GI explore what we can base off of a grassland, and then using that NLP hook, what makes sense for grasslands. Like, we're not going to generate lava inside of rock, inside of grasses, for instance. Maybe we do, and then we let the entire map burn up. I actually had a little fun experiment with that, and that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, since in your answer for Wes, you mentioned the novelty search, I have a question about that. So I
Yeah.
wonder, how can you elaborate a little bit more? Like, how do you measure the novelty in this kind of approach? Because I would imagine you want the game to be more fun. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is the measurement for the novelty search?
Fun is a an interesting word in the Dwarf Fortress world, at least. It's having fun to lose over and over again. Um, that's tricky because you need to understand the semantics behind the language, I think, and having a fun experience while still procedurally generating it is kind of interesting. And it's probably different from person to person, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly what the answer is. To me, I really like the adventure of exploring some kind of a world. So like when I see a big So the map I showed in the video is generated by simplex noise. I think that's just fascinating to explore myself, but other people might be extremely bored by that. So I think it's giving variety and trying to generate as many different situations as possible that maybe, hopefully everybody can find something they're interested in.
Gotcha. So currently the approach focuses a little bit more on, the diversity of the variants, for example. Like
To
there.
me, yeah. So that kind of goes in with Wes's second part of his question that I didn't answer. So compared to standard procedural generation, procedural generation in games is strictly just having a set of rules and creating something programmatically, right? Adding on evolutionary computation of some kind, in this case, novelty search, just I think at least adds a little bit more searching power and intelligence to a very constrained system. Now, the constraint could be like millions and millions of possibilities, but a little bit of intelligence for figuring out how those pieces can be put together a little bit more interestingly could be quite neat, I think.
Gotcha. So I can tell it's a very interesting.
Yep.
We have some comment there. So very interesting topic. It seems it can lead to a lot of interesting, game designs. I wonder what is your big picture this approach in the future, say for game design, for example.
So the big picture for me, I mean, there's a massive amount of games coming out that are leveraging things like this. There's Caves of Cud was mentioned. There's what is it, Astroneer and Returnal, I think, is another one that's starting to use this. There's a lot of big game companies starting to really hone in on what the indie game scene's been doing with procedural. So basically, this is my my way of doing fun work that is kind of a stress relief, is to write video games, and trying to bring in GI I thought was going to be kind of a fun spin. So my big picture is to release a game of some kind where we can demonstrate GI, maybe get undergrads or high school students involved in something like that. For me, it's a stress relief to build these things. I think it's a lot of fun.
Question from Bobby. Do you think it's possible that feedback could be given from players on how fun they found map story and incorporate training data?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm kind of toying with the idea of having a game that generates itself along with the player. So as they kind of explore different areas of a map, for instance, and this is all in the future, I think, at this point, because I don't have that. If you can kind of figure out what they are interested in playing with, like if they really get into, say, a farming mechanic, like if you have an inventory where you can farm and plant stuff and they really like that, well, then maybe your game kind of generates other areas in the background while that happens. World map and the story behind it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to
there's a lot of good questions here.
Yeah, West's question is kind of relevant before. Could you make a synthetic testing agent that can find holes in game story or give a quality score so it is predictive of human player opinions? Like fun.
Okay, yes. So the other thing that I didn't talk about, there's a story generator framework called Tracery, and there's another one called Rita, which are both very interesting. They kind of go that route of trying to put together cohesive narratives, cohesive stories. I'm trying to use those tools that give you that cohesion and hook it into that map generation. The map generation is just a really pretty visual, but you could also have dialogue trees generated off this way as well.
So we have 17 seconds. Let's try. How far would you like to go by incorporating game logic in GI?
I think that's an interesting idea. I mean, the idea of a world that learns with you, the mechanics learning with you, I think is really neat. I think of using some of these methods of transplanting code could be cool. Yeah.
Cool.
I think that'd be a lot of interesting fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
So, yeah, it's like the timing is pretty good.
There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great Q&A session. Time went well. Yeah. So thank you, Erik. Is this our last? Oh, this is our last paper in the first session, right?
Ooh.
Yeah. So now I don't know. Did you see like a discussion room option there? It didn't happen for me. But anyway.
I'm live until now.